All right, chapter 18. And for chapter 18, I have my little helper, Savannah. Savannah, you want to say hi?
Hi.
Chapter 18, a scavenger hunt. And the word ladder is hunt, hint, mint, mind, find. Norbridge faced the door to room 213 and stroked his beard. Elizabeth thought he might knock, but he simply stood studying the door as if trying to make up his mind about something. He moved closer, leaning in, and although at that point it was impossible for Elizabeth to see what he was doing, she was certain he had pressed his ear against the door and was listening for any sound within. She didn't allow herself to take a breath, and she half wondered, through her alarm and uncertainty, if her heart was beating so loudly he could hear it. And then, with a small creak from the floor in the hallway, Norbridge backed away, shook his head, and strode out of sight. 3 nights in a row, Elizabeth said to herself as she stepped off the chair. And although she was tempted to leave her room and see what Norbridge was up to in the library, she told herself that what she'd seen was all the proof she needed that if Norbridge wasn't a book thief trying to locate books that he'd stashed in his library, something else very strange was definitely going on. The next morning at breakfast, Elizabeth told Freddie that she'd seen Norbridge heading to the library once again, but they agreed to focus on their scavenger hunt and put everything else, the library, Norbridge, Marcus Q. Himes and his wife, the Code and Nestor's painting, out of their thoughts, at least for the rest of the day. I plan to concentrate on stumping you on this scavenger hunt, Freddie announced, before they parted to finalize their clues. You're the one who will be wandering around Winterhouse until Christmas, Elizabeth said. Savannah.
Stop it.
Freddie gave her a snake-eyed look. Be back here in 1 hour for the exchange of clues, he said, and they both raced off to put everything in order. When they met under the family tree painting at exactly 10 o'clock, they handed each other clue number 1 and shook hands. Elizabeth had her empty backpack on her back, because she figured she would need something in which to stash the items she found over the next hour or two. May the best scavenger hunt clue solver win, Freddie said. Duck logo, Elizabeth said. I mean, good luck. As Elizabeth rushed out of the corridor and into the lobby, she unfolded the note Freddie had given her. I'm red, and it's red. Yes, I carry a map. Norbridge needs me to help him. Check under the cap. Elizabeth stopped. What in the world can that mean, she thought, and she began to think maybe Freddie really would stump her with his clues. Norbridge needs me to help him, she said aloud. She looked up, glanced around, saw the hotel guests scurrying through the lobby, and saw the clerks behind the desk smiling as they greeted people just arriving. The bellhop stood attentively, and then it struck her. The bellhops! Jackson! It had to be. He dressed in red and was the one Norbridge trusted the most. Elizabeth dashed over to Sampson, who was standing by the front door, and asked him if he knew where Jackson was. I think he's in Grace Hall, making sure the chairs are all arranged, he said, and Elizabeth raced off to find him. Jackson, she called out when she burst through the doors of Grace Hall. He looked up. Miss Summers, he said. Good morning to ya. She stopped. She stood before him and tried to catch her breath. Good morning to you too, she said. He stood looking at her, and it seemed to Elizabeth that he was trying not to smile. May I help you? He said. Have you talked to Freddie recently? Jackson looked up. Freddie, he said. Let me think. Come on, Jackson, Elizabeth said, certain now that she was onto something. You know what I'm talking about. She glanced at the note again. Check under the cap, she read to herself. The cap, she said to Jackson. Your cap. Jackson leaned forward to allow Elizabeth to remove the bright red pillbox hat strung on his head. Please, miss, he said. Can you adjust my hat? As she took it off, a street map of Madrid fluttered to the ground along with a note with the words clue number 2 written on it. First item, Elizabeth said, a map of Spain. I suppose I forgot, Jackson said. That young Mr. Knox came to me 20 minutes ago and asked me to put all this on my head. He smiled to her. On your way, though. I have work to do. Thank you, she said. She scooped up the map and stuffed it into her backpack. As she raced out of Grace Hall, she unfolded the note, which read, GTEPI, YCIOEIELAP The key word is my name backwards. Elizabeth ran to her room and got out a guide for children to use the alphabet grid. She tried Freddie backwards for the keyword, and when that didn't work, she tried Frederick backwards, and then Knox backwards, and then just plain old Fred backwards. Nothing unlocked the code. She began to feel discouraged. Maybe he made a mistake using the cipher, she thought. His name backwards obviously doesn't work. She studied the clue. She read it over and over again, and then she realized something. My name backwards. It's the letters in the words my name turned around. She used the letters EMANYM as the keyword, and the 4 words of the code seemed to burst into view. Check my workshop door. Elizabeth raced to the Walnut Wonderlog workshop on the 3rd floor and found a bag hanging on the door handle. Inside were 5 pieces of Florschen and clue number 3. He's pretty good, Elizabeth thought, and now I have a map and some candy. I just wonder how far along he is. She unfolded the note and read the following. It's the only single word Asia Dorm can make. If you find this place, put your hand in the lake. What? Elizabeth thought. He wants me to go outside to the lake? She studied the lines with focus and extreme focus on the 2 words that stuck out like a sore thumb. Asia Dorm. If those 2 words are actually a part of an anagram, she thought, and if there's only one possible word the 2 of them can rearrange themselves into, her thoughts began to swirl, and suddenly the word dioramas popped into her mind. The dioramas near the portrait gallery, she said aloud, and she dashed off to the room where 6 dioramas, an elaborate model of Winterhouse, a medieval castle, the ruins of Machu Picchu, Central Park, and the city of Pompeii. Each sat atop pedestals and invited admiration of their minute and detailed layouts. Can you let the dogs out, please, Savannah? Thank you. Sorry, guys. Elizabeth had stopped to glance at them for only a moment the day before, and now she was in a rush to find the 3rd item and the next clue, but she was amazed at the artistry on display in each diorama. She ran her eyes over the 6 of them and noticed something sitting on the recreated Lake Luna next to the huge model of Winterhouse. It was a rubber ball, nearly the size of a jawbreaker that would barely fit in your mouth, and underneath it a note labeled clue number 4. He is good, Elizabeth said aloud. I have to admit, he's very good. Thank you, Savannah. It went on like this all morning. Elizabeth solving one clue after the next, and even taking a few minutes to fit one piece into the puzzle for the 2 men in the lobby, until an hour and a half later she discovered clue number 10. If you want an origami bird who's nice and fat, you'll have to make sure to rescue him from Donald's cat, and figured it must be prodding her to check in the portrait gallery. She remembered seeing a portrait of Donald Falls painted over 60 years before, with a gray tabby behind him. She made her way along the corridors to the gallery, and was just about to enter through the door that was half open when she heard voices within and stopped. Everything will unfold in time, someone, a woman, said. Elizabeth moved closer to the door and peered in. There, standing before the wall to one side and in profile to her, was Marcus Q. Himes. Oops. Sorry, my battery is getting low, so I had to hit the button there. I'm sorry, I lost my spot. Oh, Marcus Q. Himes, and beside him his wife. We know what must be done, Marcus said. They both seemed to be talking to one of the paintings, though from where Elizabeth stood, it was impossible for her to see which one. She remained still, watching and waiting. So close, the woman said. I can feel it. We're so close, and now that we have found that little girl. She turned to Marcus. It took us some time, but we found her. Marcus reached for her hand. Yes, and everything follows from that, he said. And then he looked to the unseen painting again. We will not let you down, he said, as though speaking to the painting itself. The 2 of them began walking toward the door where Elizabeth stood. Just as she was about to rush away, she saw Marcus's gaze fix on one of the portraits along the wall. Elizabeth squinted, An origami bird made of black paper appeared to be taped to the frame of the painting that Marcus was studying. Without warning, he darted out a hand, snatched the small figure from the picture frame, and dropped it to the floor. He lifted his foot above it and then crushed it hard, rubbing 3 times for good measure, as if he was getting rid of some dangerous spider. "Vile little decorations," he said to his wife, his voice filled with such disgust, and they continued walking toward Elizabeth. The feeling came over her. She wanted to flee, but she felt fixed in place and could only stare at Marcus Q. Himes and his wife as they drew nearer. With a few more steps, they would surely see her through the opening in the doorway. And that takes us to chapter 19, which is called In the Dark Corridor. And that word ladder is dark, dare, dire, wire, wife. I mean, this is very mysterious and it's getting very good. I hope you're feeling very, very sucked in by the story as well. And I can't wait to read the next chapter to you.